Today we're going to show you how to make a memory board. A memory board is great for any of your kids, but particularly for a baby. It's really sweet to be able to show some of the first pictures, maybe some of the cards you get. All you have to do in this one is tuck it in, no push pins, no hassles, just tuck it in. You can also clip little clothespins onto the ribbon and hang some of your favorite charms, maybe the bracelet from the hospital, little memory things just along the way with these little tiny clothespins. Some of the supplies you'll be needing for today's project is the paint that you're going to want to use. For the frame, of course, you choose your frame size that you want to use, your paint, some fabric and ribbon of your choice. This is your foam core board that will be used for behind the fabric. Scissors, of course, buttons of your choice. You'll need these push pins. They're little push pin tacks to before the buttons. X-Acto knife, a nailer of some sort, sandpaper, measuring tape, ruler, wire. A glue gun is really helpful, and a long nail and a hammer and some piece of wood to nail on so that you don't nail through your table. When you get your vintage frame, it's probably going to have a picture in it and some backing on it. So flip it over, take all of the backing out, your picture out, take out your hooks and all of your pins. And don't forget the back. Once you've got 2 coats of paint on your frame and you're satisfied that your surface has been covered, you might want to sand it back. We're going to, for this vintage frame, do an aged effect, which requires a sanding block or sandpaper just to get the beauty of the detail to show through. If you don't want much taken back, you can use just a sort of a worn, soft, medium sandpaper, and what you'll get is a light edge showing through of an aged effect. Now my color that it was originally is showing through. If you want to get a sharper edge, you can put some more coarse sandpaper on the outside of your sanding block and just do a sharper edge. I want the inside here to be quite soft, so I'm going to leave it on just the medium sandpaper and just get a nice, slightly distressed look. When your foam core is cut to the right size to fit your frame, you want to lay it on top of your fabric and cut your fabric around so that you have a border of about 1 inch to 1.5 inches ready to glue. Your fabric on the back doesn't have to be an absolute square, it's not going to matter, just cut it so that it's bigger. And make sure that you iron your fabric. You might want to spray it with water or whatever just to get all of your wrinkles out because it will really show on your board once it's done. When your fabric is ironed and ready to place to glue onto the foam core board, you put the wrong side of your fabric facing up. Your foam core has no right or wrong side, so you just place that on top of your fabric and you glue starting in the center of the lengthwise and width of your fabric just to tack all sides down. Once you tack the center, you want to just run a small line of glue. Pull your fabric slightly tight, not too tight because you're going to distort the rest of your board. Just lightly glue it at a comfortable taut position and then do the reverse side. And this is where you can pull it tight. This side, when you pull it, you'll have the resistance of your other side and you pull it tight. You have to be really careful when you have a direction of your fabric, because if you have a pattern on your fabric, you're going to want to make sure that when you're pulling your sides tight that you're not distorting the angle and the dimension of your fabric. Anything with lines, a gingham fabric, a print, has to be random in order to make any sense. So when you're gluing, remember that the tightness of your fabric has to do with how it's laying on the right side of your board. So when you pull your fabric tight on all sides, you're adjusting the front to be nice and smooth and even. If you have a pattern or a direction of your fabric, you have to be very careful that you're not distorting it by the way you're straightening your fabric when you pull it. This one I don't have to worry about, but you don't need it to be super tight. just tight enough to have no gaps or wrinkles on the other side. If you make a mistake with your gluing, it's really difficult to get off because your hot glue will pull off the paper on the foam core. So here's the trick. When your glue is dry and you find that on the right side of your fabric you've got some bumps or some gaps, like little bubbles almost, in order to get the glue off, just heat it with your iron and you'll see that it actually turns wet almost, and you pull it off and it's really easy then to adjust and to stick back down. Remember to reheat it, because if you don't, you're going to pull the paper off your backing, which makes it really lumpy. To do the corner, you want to just pull it tight up at a point, lay it down, and just glue it straight. Your back is not going to be seen, and so all you want is a nice tight corner. You pull it up to a point, pull it straight down, and you have a point, and you glue the underside of the fold so that it stays flat. When you've got your frame completely sanded and sufficiently aged to your personal choice, you want to take the piece that you've cut and wrapped with your fabric, and I just want to show you what it looks like before we put the ribbons on. This would actually look nice as a pin board. You can stick your push pins right into here and it will work for photographs or cards or messages, but we're going to show you how to add ribbons and buttons to make a ribbon board. So to lay the ribbons on, we're just cutting them a little bit bigger than your board so that we can wrap around and glue them to the other side. So what you're going to want to do when you want to lay your ribbons in a horizontal line like this is make sure you're in the middle. So if I take 14 inches of my width, divide it in half, and which would be 7, and then 3.5, I'm going to put my ribbon in the middle of that 3.5. So between 3 and 4 goes a ribbon on this end, and then 3 to 4 inches on this side. I'm going to glue this down, and then we're going to put the buttons on. So once your ribbon lines are glued in place, you're going to want to put your buttons on. Again, our width is 18 inches, so we're going to take half of that, which is 9, and go half of 9, which is 4.5. So I've decided to place my buttons at 4.5. So I'm just going to make a little mark in the center. You can do that on your ribbons too. If you want to measure out your inch line and put 2 little marks, it's easier maybe than using your ruler. So you just do your 4.5 inches, a little mark on each side. So the next step was to punch a hole through at our 4.5 inch mark. I've got a piece of wood underneath so I don't bang my table. We've got the 4.5 inch mark in the center of the ribbon, and you just put a hole through it, and you're going to use a push pin. One of these fasteners, a 2-inch fastener from Staples, looks like this when you get it. And what you do is you push it through the hole, you open it on the back side, and then to make it super tight, you hammer it down in place. This makes your ribbon very tight on both sides. Then you take your button, you turn it over, and on the reverse side you place a rim of glue, turn it over, and hold it tight in the center of where you pushed your tack in, and just hold it there until it's dry. And we're going to do that 3 more times to create the other buttons. So once you have all your buttons glued onto your board, we're going to now mount it into the frame. So you flip your frame over, put your board in the center. There shouldn't be a right and wrong angle. And I'm going to use a brad nailer to push the pins in and hold my board in place. If you don't have one of these, sometimes they come on the end of a stapler, or you can just hammer nails in. So your frame will be basically finished, but if you want to finish the reverse side, which looks a little messy, in a more professional manner, you can use your classic glue stick, run around the outside edge of all of your flat part. We're not going to go on to the angled part. Take a piece of brown paper, lay it over top. Just brown craft paper, you can get it in a roll usually, or even a piece of wrapping paper would be fine. Any paper that's heavy enough to not show through on the back. Once it's glued, you want to take a coarse piece of sandpaper and just sand the edge. And what'll happen is it all just peels away and you end up with a nicely finished edge.